Good morning, Naomi. How you doing? Hey, Veronica. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Well, it's Monday again, isn't it?
Yes,
We lived through the weekend,
we
so we're
did.
here. We're here to tell about it.
I
Good
know
morning,
it
everybody.
seems. Good morning, Armando. Good morning, Rob. It,
How you
it
doing?
seems it seems as though it got cold again. I'm not happy about that. Or I'm feeling cold.
Well, you wouldn't be wrong. And it's not that it got down as cold as it had been. It just seems like along with the temperature drop, the humidity went up, so it feels colder.
Oh, okay.
You know, so it's actually more like Georgia in the winter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not as dry, Um, a couple of weeks ago when it got like really cold, the humidity went way down, and so it was cold, but it didn't really feel, quite as cold. Now it's like, I'm with you. I can't get the house warm, because of it's just it's not like freezing cold. It's just cool and it's damp. So I don't know.
Hi, John.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Hello, everybody. How we doing?
We were just complaining that it's Monday
Yeah, and it cold.
and cold.
Uh, Charles,
Yes, Armando.
Friday I couldn't stop at the studio because a woman changed my plan. When I was eating lunch, she called me and asked me to bring her lunch. So I had to go buy a lunch for her and come back home and deliver the lunch to her. So this week I will stop. I don't know what day you're gonna be in the studio. So
You could, if you want.
if that woman don't change my plan.
Oh, you must really like her. That was so kind of you.
Well, she's nice. She take me out for dinner.
Oh,
So,
okay.
So you can bring her lunch every once in a while, huh? Okay.
uh-huh.
All right. Yeah, Veronica, I was not going to go down that path with him because,
Oh,
we could get off into a very long conversation about all that. I'm sure.
that's why I said it, so I could shut up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just going to let it go. Anyway.
Now, well, probably you don't know. They sent an email, and they say between the 5th and the 8th of April, they're gonna hand in frozen food. So that means that week the restaurant's gonna be closed, or you don't know?
No, it's not going to be closed. It's what they call a down week. It's between the sessions, and
Uh-huh.
and we're basically there to basically make sure we have enough supplies and everything is set up for the next 6 weeks.
And the registration start today. Yeah?
Yeah, it starts today. For me, it starts today and goes through Thursday.
So
Just send me an email if you. The only thing I have available is the plein air class. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email.
what do you mean primary class?
I'm sorry, what?
You said only you had available the primary class. What do you mean with primary?
No, plein air.
Oh, plain air.
Yes, the one outside.
Well, but I already told you, you told me that wasn't enough. You're gonna put me on the list.
No, what I told you was when registration starts, send me an email and I will put you on. Yes. All you have to do is say, I would like to sign up for your plein air class. We'll put your name on. Okay?
Plain air class.
And that starts today and goes to Thursday. Okay?
All right. Veronica, are you gonna participate?
Hang on. I'm not done.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, the easy way to sign up for the plein air class is send me an email. The hard way to do it is try to call me or send me a text. Okay?
Oh, all right. Yeah, you told us about the test. So
yeah, because I'm trying to
send you an email.
And and I love talking to you guys and all, but
well, I don't have nothing to talk about it.
Okay.
My subjects are boring.
What about what?
The subjects in my life are boring for you. So I don't have nothing to talk about it.
You're making an assumption there, but okay. It's fine.
Well, when you retire, you will realize there's not much outside your art field that you can talk about other things, because the life start to get, I don't know, there's less and less than you get involved and less that you know. And so.
Armando, did you have children?
One, but he went back. He didn't like United States. He went back to South America, and I have a granddaughter.
Okay, all right.
And his citizen. He can come back anytime, but now when he has a daughter over there, so he doesn't want to come back. So
now you're from Colombia, right?
Yeah, I was from there. Yes,
from Colombia. So your son went back. Your son went back to Colombia.
Yes. And I left there 45 years ago, and I never went back. So,
all right. Well, but you see, you have other things to talk about than just art.
Well, church, but you won't be interested in talk about church. So,
no,
that's my only life.
Okay, Armando. You have church, you have art, you have your girlfriends that you're still trying to get one of them to sit on your couch so you can paint her. You've got your son, you've got your grandchild, you've got lunch at Benson, 5 days a week, except for next week. All right. So, I mean, that's kind of a long laundry list right there, all in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, you seem to have a busy life. Okay. So, it ain't too bad. And Armando, just, to put your mind at ease, when I retire,
you will be painting.
Well, yes, I'll be painting, but I also have 6 grandchildren.
Oh, you think?
I have 2 children, who are still relatively young. My son is 33. My daughter is 22 now, and she hasn't even started having kids yet. So, plus I have my brother, my sister, and of course all of my sister children, and then all my family in West Virginia and North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So I have lots of things to keep me busy.
Good.
Yeah.
You have lots of blessings.
Yeah, I mean, look, believe me, I've learned from all of you, okay, in watching you over the years, as I've come to this point in my life. Retirement, you don't slow down. If nothing else, you seem to get busy.
You speed up.
Yeah, rather than less busy, you get more busy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Not only that, it takes more time.
yeah, you know,
And it's harder.
yeah, in a somewhat cynical way, you know, that's why I've kept doing what I'm doing, because I'm busy enough already. I don't need to be busier.
You're gonna get busy spoiling your grandchildren.
Well, I try to do that on occasion, you know, but I you know, they're all under 5. So there's really only two of them that I can really spoil.
That's the best time.
Yeah.
They are little.
Yeah. Now that they're about 5 years old, you know, I mean, they get it. You know, it's like, oh, granddad's here. He's going to take us out for cake and ice cream. Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Spend a couple hours with us. And then about the time that the sugar kicks in, he's going to drop us back off to mom and dad. Yeah. Okay.
They get
Turn it
damaged
off,
now
scared
when they are
flag.
little, because when they grow, you know, they are gone. So they get vanished now.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So happy Monday, everybody. We got a whole 10 of us here now. As promised, I told you that we are going to move eastward. The last couple of weeks, we had been looking at some African type art. And I wanted to share with you a video. And this is about art really in the Middle East. Now, we've seen some things on the Middle East already. And we've certainly, when we were looking at Africa, one of the big parts of that was the influence of Islam, you know, on the art, architecture, and culture in that area. But now we're going to get really kind of right to the heart of it, really right in the Middle East, particularly around the what's called the Umayyads. And the Umayyads were Persian rulers who really ruled over a very large empire in the Middle East long ago. And we're going to look at some of the art, you know, from that period of time up until the Ottomans. And if you've never heard of the Ottomans, they were really kind of centered around Turkey, Istanbul in particular. And, you know, they have a long history, you know, all by themselves. So we're going to take a look at that. And then somebody had asked a question. I had brought it up, a material or a process called silver point. Anybody remember that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to actually watch a video on silver point as well. And that way you'll get a better understanding as to what it is and, you know, how it works, and maybe some historical context for it as well. Okay. Anybody got any questions before we move forward?
Yes. How do you spell Umayyads?
Oh, the Umayyads. It's O-M. Let's see. I'll look right here. Okay, actually, it's not. It's U-M-A-Y-Y-A-D.
Oh. Okay.
Umayyad
Thanks.
Empire.
Okay.
And the
Thank you.
Ottomans are O-T-T-O-M-A-N-S.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them. I had never heard of the Umayyads.
Yeah. Well, that would be from the Persian Empire. Okay.
Okay.
So
Persian.
we're only covering about maybe about 600 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Of history in that area. Okay, so away we go. And everybody see a black and white, great museums.
Yep, I
graphic
do.
here. Okay, good. So we're all on the right page. All right, and away we go.
Today, at a pivotal moment in world history, two great museums beckon us to explore the splendor of Islamic art, lifting the veil in our shared cultural heritage. The objects on display in the Islamic galleries of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York and the Louvre in Paris reveal a roadmap of connections. This explains why the foreign seems familiar.
Je me suis consacrée à l'art islamique. I have dedicated my life career to Islamic art for many years now, attracted, no doubt, by the beauty. Mon œil a été séduit et je dirais, my eye was seduced by the whole culture, a culture that may look different in some ways, but at the same time is actually quite close.
Universal museums like the Louvre and the Metropolitan help dispel the idea that cultures are exclusive, when in fact they are intertwined.
Today we live in a world that is connected and global, but our connected and global world also has a history.
Pour cet art islamique, Islamic art is without a doubt more difficult to access for those who may not have any knowledge of the culture. Whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims, many just don't have any knowledge of this very complicated history.
The art of Islam reflects 14 centuries changing political and cultural landscapes across 3 continents.
So you're talking about a tremendous mix of world images, cultures, and the results that came out in the literature and the art of the Islamic world. It's very exciting.
One of the glories of Islamic art is inlaid metalwork. And one of the absolute pinnacles of this technique, this type of art, is the Baptistère de Saint-Louis.
Created in Mamluk Egypt, it became part of the royal collections of France.
C'est un bassin en métal. It is a basin of metal, copper alloy, inlaid with silver, that was crafted in Syria or Egypt in the mid-14th century.
Ce bassin va servir.
And this basin will be used later for the baptisms of royal children, including Louis XIII.
The Mamluks were slaves trained as soldiers who overthrew their masters and ruled an Islamic empire for 300 years from Cairo.
À l'intérieur du bassin, nous avons, inside the basin, we have friezes of riders, which illustrate the court life and the warrior concept of the Mamluk dynasty of Egypt.
Dynastie des Mamelouks d'Égypte.
Hey guys, check this out. If you own a home and you don't get back.
Yep, gotta buy a.
There are scenes of battle and violence,
No doubt.
the decapitated head and severed limbs.
The interesting thing is, of course, that there was no resistance to using it for a Christian religious rite, baptism, even though it had been made by Muslim craftsmen. It worked just fine.
Je pense qu'une chose importante aussi.
I think that an important thing to understand when you want to discover Islamic art is that Islamic art is not simply just an Arab art.
Nor is it simply religious art. The term Islamic art, coined by 19th century art historians, includes all art produced in Muslim lands from the 7th century forward, from Spain to Morocco, Egypt, the Middle East, Central Asia, and India, to the borders of China.
Dans l'univers mental aujourd'hui, on a l'impression. Today, we tend to think that Islam is the East. At least, that's how Islamic art is presented in Western culture. But Spain was Islamic, and Morocco is a Western kingdom.
Take, for instance, the roaring Monthon lion, a cast bronze fountain spout dated between the 12th and 13th centuries in Islamic Spain. In characteristic Islamic style, the surface of the line is completely covered with engraved decorations, including Arabic calligraphy.
Now, obviously, you're talking about a huge variety. You're talking about Spain to India and beyond, and everything in between has its own style, it has its own materials, and you might even say, what's common between all of this? What unites all of this?
The most obvious connection is the presence of Islam. Muslims believe that God revealed a new faith to the Prophet Muhammad, beginning in 610 AD near the city of Mecca, where the well-established Jewish, Christian, and pagan communities rejected him. He moved to Medina and died 10 years later in 632. Yet, in that mere 10-year span, Muhammad and his army succeeded in conquering most of the Arabian Peninsula for Islam.
When we talk about Islamic art, everyone expects objects coming from a mosque. And I think it is important to say and repeat that Islamic art is not only a religious art, but at the same time, we also have to show in what way Islamic art is religious.
Traditionally, the creative focal point for Muslim communities is the mosque.
In its very simplest form, the mosque is really the structure that gives you the direction for worship towards Mecca. That's often just a simple wall with an indentation in it that indicates the direction that Mecca lies in.
Over time, this indentation, called a mihrab or prayer niche, became more elaborate. The brilliant blue tiles of this dazzling mihrab are distinct to the Iranian city of Isfahan, the Blue City. More than 600 years ago, artisans cut and pieced together tiny glazed ceramic tiles, produced the scrolling foliage and calligraphic designs of this meticulous masterpiece.
Cette technique de la mosaïque qui s'est développée dans... These mosaic techniques were first developed in the Greek and Roman worlds. It's a little known fact that the cultures of Islam used the technical and decorative repertoire of late antiquity.
As Muslim artists conquered more and more territory, local artistic traditions were blended into an evolving Islamic style. In the 12th century, Muslim artisans skillfully hammered and pierced copper to create the intricate open-work pattern of this mosque.
Et puis, il y a une inscription, alors,
And then there is an inscription on the upper part of the wall.
de la pose, Dieu unique et Dieu.
There is one God, and God is God. And that is what creates the first pillar of the Islamic faith.
Designed to hang from the ceiling, the lamp filled the room with filtered light, symbolizing the presence of God.
Pour moi, elle évoque.
For me, it symbolizes the foundation of Islam.
Il s'agit d'une lampe qui vient de le fameux dôme.
It is a lamp that comes from the famous Dome of the Rock, built by Abd al-Malik, one of the first caliphs in the Umayyad world, in the end of the 7th century.
The Umayyads are responsible for the first great monuments of Islamic art and architecture. The Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem is the oldest Islamic shrine in the world, built on the site of a Roman temple.
Et c'est une manière, je pense,
And this is a symbolic way, I think, to show that the Caliph Umayyad is the new Roman emperor of this Mediterranean world.
The Umayyads set up their new capital outside of Arabia in Damascus, Syria, an area that had long been exposed to the cultures and sensibilities of the Mediterranean world. Here they built the Great Mosque of Damascus, which employed forms and elements of classical art, like columns, vaults, and domes.
Only d'abord, we're talking about a territory that partly overlapped the ancient Roman Empire. We, at the Louvre, wanted to reiterate that continuity between antiquity and the Islamic world.
At the Metropolitan, this bronze Umayyad picture from the 7th century shows the merging of Persia's 4,000-year-old artistic traditions with a new Islamic aesthetic.
And it has this long handle, very elegant handle. And if you look at it, you see that it's actually feline, perhaps some kind of a leopard or mountain cat that's elegantly stretched its whole body over to form the handle. What is it doing? All around the rim is a goose that it's chasing. It's hunting a goose. It's really the great Persian theme of hunting, which informs so much of Persian art.
But the body represents a transition in taste from figural art to repetitive designs. Elaborate patterns of scrolling lines, geometric shapes, or calligraphy often point to an Islamic influence.
If you see this plant in your backyard, don't step on it. This neglected plant is more delicious and nutritious.
Calligraphy is a way to reproduce the written word through an artistic drawing.
Ce n'est pas un hasard s'il y a, obviously, calligraphy as a core component of Islamic art is not a coincidence. It is fundamentally related to the fact that the Islamic world is an entity, with Islam as its dominant and official religion. Islam.
Arabic calligraphy is found everywhere in Islamic art. The hull of this galleon glows with sweeping golden strokes. A closer look shows the image to be a calligram, composed of calligraphy.
The writing of calligraphy was considered the highest art, more important than painting and other arts, because it was devotional and because, of course, the first thing that a great calligrapher would do would be to copy the Quran. The Quran is the holy book of the Muslims. It is the revelation handed down from God to Muhammad. It is canonical. No word in the Quran changes. They are the same words that were written down after Muhammad recited them in the 7th century.
Ce manuscrit s'agit d'un Coran d'époque. This manuscript is a Quran from the time of the Mamluk Sultanate. It was made in Egypt, in Cairo, at the end of the 14th century.
The back of the book is actually at the front. Arabic, like Hebrew, is read from right to left.
Et ensuite, and then we have a double opening page with a particularly elegant design. Again, with a frame to highlight all its splendor. Et nous avons les premières, and we have the first verses of the Quran that were copied on a delicately decorated background with plant foliage dotted with lotus buds.
It's natural that a beautiful, sacred book would need to be displayed with elegance and respect. Bookstands like this one, called ralas, were the focus of artistic enterprise throughout the Islamic world.
It's made from a single piece of wood that would have had to be split and separated so that it falls in the form of an X. But if you stand it up together, you can see that it was essentially formed from a single piece of wood. On the sides of this bookstand, you find extraordinary, very fine, very deep carving. And if you look at it closely, you realize that it's been conceived of on 3 different levels. You have almost secret, hidden inscriptions at the very deepest level. God's name and the sacred name of the Prophet underpin everything else that you see.
Sacred writing is woven into every aspect of Islamic life. The 99 names of God are stitched around the circumference of this prayer rug of the Louvre.
Puisqu'en Islam, in Islam, there is a way to evoke God through a number of names and adjectives, and they are all mentioned here. Tous mentionnés. You also have many inscriptions, and that makes this rug of a high quality. It is very, very difficult to read the inscriptions because you must be very precise, and as you know, writing is very important in Islamic art.
Arabic script in the Quran was the physical manifestation of God's message. Spread beyond its early borders, the Prophet's native tongue became the official language, tying religion to power and the Arabian identity.
When you come to our galleries or to any museum or any place where you have evidence, objects, scholarship, you're not just told that Greek medicine was translated into Arabic, but there you have the manuscript itself, the evidence itself, with all the accurate information. That's the great thing about a museum. You make up your own mind about it, and you've got all the tools before you to do so. And that is really very empowering.
When the Umayyad dynasty fell to its rivals, the Abbasids, in the 8th century, the center of the Islamic world shifted east to Baghdad, and so did the seat of collective knowledge. This marked the start of the golden age of Islam.
Il faut avoir en tête que le monde, we have to keep in mind that the Islamic world served as a kind of conservatory for the knowledge inherited from antiquity.
In Baghdad, the Abbasid caliphs gathered scholars to collect and translate all the knowledge in the known world. It was an epic undertaking. For 400 years, the arts and the sciences flourished. It was all destroyed when the Mongols conquered Baghdad in the 13th century.
But what they achieved in that period is known as a golden age of Islam, because it advanced all the things that humanity values, not just the Muslim world, but the world.
These are pages from a popular medical reference titled De Materia Medica, one of the first scientific texts to be translated from Greek to Arabic in 9th century Baghdad.
It was written by Dioscorides, who was a Greek who lived in what's now Turkey in the early 1st century AD. And this was translated into Arabic and then illustrated.
It's a pharmacopoeia with descriptions of about 1,000 medicines made from plants. This page, on the other hand, shows men making medicine out of honey.
C'est par le biais it is through these Arabic translations that texts from classical antiquity, especially Greek and Roman, were retransmitted to the West.
When we study the ways cultures converge, science often lies at the intersection. This is an Islamic astrolabe, meaning star holder, based on an ancient Greek instrument predicting the position of moon, stars, and other planets.
In fact, some of the instruments that you see were shared technologies between Muslim and Christian sailors who would love to get their hands on these kind of advanced instruments while they were establishing trade routes around the world. Because everyone always wants the latest gadget. Whether it's an iPhone or an astrolabe, it's a kind of unifying interest.
The astrolabe was refined in the Islamic world, most notably by the astronomer Al-Sufi, who described 1,000 different uses for this instrument, including the direction of Mecca for prayer.
Here we have a manuscript, which is the Book of the Images of the Fixed Stars by Al-Sufi. Now, this was written in the late 10th century originally, then copied and copied and copied.
This 15th century copy, made 500 years after Al-Sufi's original, is open to a double page showing two enthroned figures.
Really what this is the constellation Cassiopeia. And Cassiopeia, in this book and all the other constellations, are shown in two views. The one on the right as if seen from outside the heavens looking down, the one on the left as if we were looking up, seeing the stars in the heavens.
Over the centuries, court astronomers updated their calculations.
There's a lot of variability in the sky, and although they're called the fixed stars, nothing's fixed at all. That was part of the genius of these scientists, that they understood that and that they were such good mathematicians that they could recalculate and recalculate over time.
We must keep in mind that familiar words like algebra or algorithms are originally from Arabic. Et c'est cette domination de la géométrie. And this domination in geometry and algebra directly influences their artistic productions.
The sophisticated application of geometry can be seen in this elegant vaulted ceiling from Mamluk, Egypt.
Ce porche a donc voyagé. This vaulted ceiling has traveled from Egypt to Europe to France in the late 19th century, but it was only recently assembled for the opening of the new halls in the Louvre Museum. This allows us to evoke the splendor of princely interiors that shows a finely carved stone decoration with some arabesque of plants and geometric patterns.
Végétal ou de motifs géométriques.
The art of geometry cannot be denied in these 14th century Egyptian doors.
Alors, on peut voir ici tout d'abord.
We can see the complexity of the geometric pattern on which the decoration is based. This decoration is organized around what is called star polygons. These are the patterns that we can see here.
Que l'on voit ici.
Exotic woods like African rosewood and ebony were often imported at great expense from faraway lands.
Dans ces régions, le bois est...
In these regions, wood was rare, and they were trying to utilize every single piece of wood that they had.
de bois dont vous pouvez disposer.
By the Middle Ages, a thriving merchant economy and a sophisticated network of trade routes helped establish the Islamic world as the first truly universal civilization.
There wasn't the idea of being a world apart. It was really a world that was connected to the wider world, and that, I think, helped facilitate robust economies and, rich, opulent courts.
Hey, my name is Daniel, and I created this painting. Now, pick up a brush. Architecture is one of the glories of Islamic art across the Islamic world, from Spain to India. One can think of the most notable buildings in the whole world, most famous buildings, and they are Islamic.
One of the most important monuments in the Islamic world is in Spain. The Great Mosque of Cordoba is considered the oldest Islamic structure in Europe and the most innovative.
The early conquerors of Spain, the early Muslim conquerors of Spain, built the Great Mosque in Cordoba. The beautiful mihrab, marvelous multi-layered arches with a kind of striped or ablak decoration.
The mosque's unique style is distinct to Moorish Iberia, where the confluence of cultures caused the Spanish lands to develop differently from the rest of Europe.
The Arabs had come in the 8th century, but the Iberian Peninsula was inhabited by Christians and Jews at that point. There for a while, people really seemed to live in peace with one another and tolerance.
This courtyard at the Metropolitan Museum of Art celebrates the artistic harmonies created by these overlapping cultures. It was constructed inside the museum by artisans from the imperial city of Fez in Morocco.
We wanted to create a Moroccan court because it's related to the Gallery for Western Islamic Art, the art of Spain, North Africa, and Southern Italy, the 8 centuries of Islam in Europe. And we also wanted to bring the hand of a kind of living craftsman to our galleries.
The starting point for the Moroccan court was 4 freestanding columns from the 15th century, original works of art.
But everything that's carved around them, the stucco above and the woodwork and the tile work, is all modern, and it's all been made in an appropriate style by these living craftsmen.
Out of 40,000 craftsmen in Fez, the Met chose the Naji family company, run by 4 brothers and their father.
We are 7th generation in this business, but for me and for my family, it's unlike any other project that we ever undertaken, because this will serve as reference for scholars to learn more about Islamic architecture. We were working in Morocco for almost 6 months, in which we fabricated all the loose tiles.
The cut tile pieces were then fitted together on the floor like a puzzle, but upside down, before being set in a concrete mortar.
We had to get some variation of colors. For instance, 3 shades of blue, there are 2 shades of green, so it has the characteristic of an ancient antique panel. The wood was carved in Morocco out of cedar from the Atlas Mountains of Fez. We used some of the best wood carvers in the city.
The plaster was carved on site by master craftsmen who excelled in sculpting arabesque or flowing vegetal compositions. Designs were laid down with stencils, then fashioned by hand using special tools.
For us, we were transported back to the year 1300. For instance, the plaster on the walls, they were smoothing it with their hands. When I look at this court, I see hands everywhere. Everything is touched by hands.
It's incredibly magical when you have artists actually working in the spaces with the art of the past. By highlighting this incredible art that still survives, we actually accomplished a great deal. We got a Moroccan Court out of it for sure, but we also we were able to really elaborate the idea of 8 centuries of Islam in Europe and its connection to North Africa.
We can indeed wonder about the place of Islamic art at the Louvre and in Western art collections. In Europe, the Islamic world was and is right here at home. The Islamic world was and is European.
Many Islamic objects found in the collections of European museums were gifts from rulers or taken as the spoils of war.
Alors, as far as the Louvre is concerned, and you may already know this, the museum dates back to 1793 and is a product of the French Revolution.
The French royal treasury included magnificent pieces of Islamic art and became the property of the Louvre in 1793.
The Louvre créé as early as 1893, the Louvre opened a section on Muslim arts. That was the word that was used in the late 19th century.
This powerful $99 drone is now available in the US. Extremely high-tech $5,000 drone.
Everybody needs a drone, right?
Today, the new Islamic galleries of the Louvre are marked by an undulating golden roof that conjures images of the floating veil, the flying carpet, or wind-blown desert sands. The surrounding neoclassical facades affirm the place of Islamic art in European art collections.
And the mode d'arrivée, one of the ways that Eastern Islamic objects came into European collections was through church treasuries, les trésors d'église.
On display at the Louvre, this ewer from the Royal Abbey of Saint-Denis near Paris was carved from a single piece of very pure, very fine crystal.
It's a ewer that arrived in that abbey in the 12th century, and therefore it is one of the oldest objects in our European collection.
But it was created in Egypt during the reign of the Fatimids, a Shia family who claimed the absolute right to rule as descendants of Muhammad's daughter, Fatima.
There are 7 of these in the world. A scholar calls them the Magnificent Seven.
Under the Fatimids, Cairo became the cultural capital of the Islamic world. That world included the Holy Land. For 200 years, crusaders from Europe fought to take control of Jerusalem until they were repelled once and for all by the Mamluks. Then, the Mongols came calling.
So this beautiful glass bottle with an enameled scene around it shows fighters dressed as Mamluks, so Egyptians and Syrians on the one hand, and Mongols on the other. And it's being made by the Mamluk glassmakers, so of course there's an edge there in favor of the Mamluks.
In Islamic Egypt, the Mamluks elevated the ancient craft of glassmaking to a fine art. Their gilded and enameled mosque lamps were coveted well beyond the borders of Islam, and exported far and wide.
On a retrouvé des objets en Chine. We find these objects in China, and others would travel to Europe and would influence the famous Venetian glassmakers, the glassmakers of Murano, who would eventually supersede Islamic glassmakers.
Les guerriers islamiques.
In fact, Italy's close ties to advanced Islamic civilizations enriched the Italian Renaissance. This ivory box in the Metropolitan, carved in southern Italy, is a prime example of those interconnections.
There are figures standing on corners that have turbans. This is a fantastic mixture of the Romanesque style of carving and sculpture and images that really are related to the Islamic world.
In Islamic Spain, finely carved ivory objects, such as this one at the Louvre, were bestowed as gifts upon members of the royal family. Made from a single ivory tusk, its sheer size is exceptional, but the carving makes it a masterpiece. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella ousted the Muslims, completing the 700-year Reconquista of Spain, and then launched Christopher Columbus on his first voyage west to a whole new world. To the east, the Islamic Empire reached the borders of China.
One of the ideas at the heart of the presentation is not to isolate the cultures of Islam, but to show that they were like other cultures, intermediaries.
At the Louvre, this 13th century dish shows the influence of Chinese ceramics on Islamic pottery.
Alors d'abord, ce qui est
So first, what is the most Chinese, I would say, in this dish is its color, this turquoise color. It was made in Iran, imitating the technique of celadon glaze.
du céladon, ces céramiques chinoises,
The Chinese ceramics with a single monochrome color, usually green or blue colors, began very early in the 10th century and were supposed to imitate jade.
du jade.
The fish and the lotus leaves are Chinese motifs, but the concentric circles of geometric patterns and elegantly stylized calligraphy ground this masterpiece in the Islamic artistic tradition.
Et souvent des œuvres comme cela, elles témoignent. Oftentimes, pieces like this reflect a technique that was born, for example, in China, which was mastered in the Islamic lands, and which was then passed on to the West. So you can see the continuity.
As early as the 9th century, Chinese pottery was being exported in huge quantities, traveling along the Silk Road. Eventually, pottery centers in Iran, like Nishapur, were producing some of the most experimental and beautiful pieces in the Islamic world. Here, dripping in browns, greens, and yellows, is the Nishapur version, the popular Chinese splash roll. And this radiant white bowl, 18 inches in diameter, is the Nishapur potter's answer to Chinese porcelain. A thin coating of white fluid clay covers a red earthenware body. The black abstract design is actually Arabic calligraphy, which reads, "The liberation before action protects you from regret."
Crazy military headphones are disrupting the billion-dollar headphone market.
Sorry for all the ads, but it is YouTube.
At the dawn of the 13th century, when this fierce jug was made, the proficiency of Iranian potters had reached the pinnacle.
Technically speaking, the jug is remarkable because it has two layers. It has an outer pierced layer of vegetation inhabited by fantastic animals, such as harpies or sphinxes, so human-headed lions, human-headed birds, but this profusion of fantastic beasts was there to protect the owner.
These star-shaped tiles contain astrological images of the zodiac.
Et ici, la représentation. Here is the image of the astrological sign of Leo, with its associated planet, the sun, in the back. Et ces carrés ici. And these tiles here were certainly made in the city of Kashan. Cette ville de Kashan.
The potters of Kashan were famous for delicate tiles in the shape of crosses and the skillful execution of the metallic luster technique.
Il s'agit d'un décor qui est peint sur une glaçure opacifiée. The design is painted on an opaque glaze, usually white, using metal particles, mixing copper and silver. And then a fairly complex firing results in this shimmering reflection, a metallic hue that sometimes resembles gold.
Ceramics of this quality and complexity required technicians and artists.
And there were also calligraphers who collaborated with the ceramic workshops to achieve this type of extremely precise inscription. Here we have a Quranic inscription. Ici exactement. And here, exactly in this area, is the imprint of a finger, probably of the ceramist who created this decoration. Maybe when he put it in the oven, he imprinted the mark of his finger. It's a little accident during the production, which leaves us a very touching trace from the artist who created that work.
Kashan's pottery industry somehow survived the Mongol invasion of the 13th century, but traces are all that remain of medieval Nishapur, which was destroyed along with other Iranian cultural centers. Genghis Khan placed all of Eurasia under Mongol rule.
So here we have a representation of Iranian society just before the arrival of the Mongols.
This stucco portrait, a fragment from a life-size sculpture, decorated an Iranian palace near the city of Rey before it was razed by Mongol armies.
Je pense que c'est intéressant.
I think it is interesting when we talk about Islamic art. We think it is a religious art and that the Quran forbids human representation.
In truth, figures are only forbidden in religious art and architecture.
The human figure is quite present everywhere and all the time in Islamic art.
In time, Khan's successors, Emil Khans or lesser Khans, created a new world order and placed themselves at the very center. This painting of Jonah and the whale is based on the Compendium of Chronicles written by Rashid al-Din, a Jewish official in the Ilkhanate court. It is considered the first attempt at a true world history.
Part of the motivations were in order to actually put the new conquerors of Iran into the story of Iran. So they were kind of writing themselves into world history.
Jonah and the angel are shown with Mongol features, and the angel is dressed in traditional Mongol clothing. Ultimately, key Mongol rulers accepted the Muslim faith.
This is one of the largest Qurans ever made.
Each line of script is over 3 feet long, and each page was originally over 7 feet tall. It was made for the brutal conqueror of Central Asia, Tamerlane, who saw himself as the rightful successor to Genghis Khan, as well as the sword of Islam.
The calligrapher who copied these lines, Omar Akhta, actually was a master calligrapher who first came to Tamerlane and presented to him the tiniest Quran you could imagine. Tiny, tiny writing. Well, he presented this virtuoso Quran to his patron, Tamerlane, who was not impressed at all. So this could be really a big problem in those days if Tamerlane wasn't pleased with you. That could mean the end of your career, the end of your life, and many bad things. So Omar Akhta decided that he would do the opposite, and he would make the biggest Quran ever made
It had to be brought to the palace on a cart because it was so big and so heavy. When he presented it to Tamerlane, the Sultan was very happy.
If you want to eat healthy and feel your best, you've got to try cassava. Cassava is the world's healthiest all.
In the 1,000 years since Muhammad received his first revelations, the Islamic world had grown, divided, conquered, and finally settled into 3 empires. The Ottomans in Turkey, the Mughals in India, the Safavids in Iran. The Safavid capital, Isfahan, was a dazzling modern city.
Much of it was newly built in the 17th century, although it was a very old city. And this tile panel has a typical scene of what would have gone on there. The tile panel depicts a woman in a rather provocative pose, handing a glass of wine to a European suitor. Now, whether this woman was a proper lady or not a proper lady is up for discussion, but the basic idea is that La Dolce Vita was alive and well in Isfahan in the 17th century.
At the Louvre, a similar panel shows a young prince and his poetry teacher engaged in a poetic joust.
Ce prince, the prince who is educated in the art of war, is also educated to write in calligraphy, to compose, first of all, poetry, and then to recite his work to his poetry master.
In Persia, poetry and literature were centuries-old traditions that eventually gave rise to a new genre of painting, the art of the illustrated book.
Under the Safavids, so in Iran in the 16th and 17th century, the art of the illustrated book achieved new heights.
These folios are from the most famous illustrated manuscript of the 16th century in Iran, the Shahnameh, or Book of Kings, made for the Safavid Shah Tahmasp.
It is luxurious in every way, the absolute peak of perfection in Persian painting.
Real gold and silver were used in the paintings, and other colors were made from grinding up gems and turning them into paint.
Many, many battle scenes. There are love scenes, there are encounters with witches, demons, dragons, all kinds of wonderful monsters, actually.
It had over 250 illustrated pages, and one of the opening folios is this one, which shows the invention of fire.
The paintings are based on the epic poem by the Persian poet Ferdowsi, written over 500 years earlier, around the year 1000. 50,000 rhyming couplets tell the tales of the ancient kings of Persia, from mythical beginnings until Persia was conquered by the Arabs in the 7th century. Some say Ferdowsi was driven by nostalgia for Persia's lost cultural identity.
This manuscript represents a high point of painting in Iran. It idealized the world to the point where terrible battles and dramatic events turned into a kind of vision of loveliness almost, and this kind of painting deeply influenced the Ottomans and the Indians on both sides of Persia.
In southern India, the kingdom of Bijapur, closely identified with Safavid Iran. This painting shows an imaginary gathering of Bijapur's past and present rulers seated on an exquisite Persian carpet.
And then you have great sweeping mountains, these pink mountains in the background with trees and vistas. The central figure sitting enthroned in the middle of the painting with one foot resting on the globe is the founder of the dynasty, Yusuf. And all around him on that fabulous carpet are his descendants. In fact, this covers a period of 200 years, but it also gives you a sense of how grand their vision of themselves was.
In reality, Bijapur would soon fall to the relentless aggressions of the Mughal Empire to the north. Magnificent bejeweled daggers like these were part of the Mughals' courtly costume, symbols of their military might and limitless wealth.
They ushered in possibly one of the most opulent eras of world art ever. Ruler after ruler brought new facets to the idea of opulence, of creativity, of accomplishment.
One of the most famous Mughal rulers is Shah Jahan, who built the Taj Mahal. This is his portrait.
He's in a very regal position. He is straight back to the horse. He is haloed. He has all these martial attributes. He also has opulent patterning, opulent daggers, opulent textiles all around him to signify his great taste of the great opulent court from which he comes and the opulence for which he stands, because he, of course, is the builder of the world's most opulent building.
The ivory white Taj Mahal is made of marble, inlaid with precious and semi-precious stones, with perfect harmony for arches, domes, and minarets. In the central chamber lie the graves of Shah Jahan and his queen. The surrounding jali screens filter soft light, bathing them in a play of shadows and patterns.
Jali means sort of a pierced screen. And to manipulate hard stone into lacy, porous filigree is an incredible technical achievement of the great stone cutting traditions of India, which of course go back before the Muslim period as well.
This jali is designed as a pattern within the pattern.
The main part of the jali consists of two overlapping trellises. One which is made of golden lines, and that is octagon based. And then within that, on a kind of inner level, which is actually inside the bigger trellis, is a smaller pattern, a star-based pattern. And at the heart of every star, we find a small meander pattern. This little element here, this and that, this together is a meander. So it takes a lot of figuring out and then, of course, to execute it.
Islamic art would reach a zenith during the final empire of Islam as the Ottomans drew creative inspiration from throughout their expansive realm.
We've moved so far away from the Constitution that in many ways we don't even recognize it.
This is the official insignia or tugra of Suleiman the Magnificent, greatest ruler of the Ottomans, Islam's final empire. Ribbons of ink reveal the Sultan's name and title amid watercolor fields of flowers and real gold. In the 16th century, under Suleiman's rule, the Ottoman state became a multinational, multilingual superpower.
The Ottoman Empire was a huge empire, and huge parts of the world were brought together not just by military conquest, political ties, all the routine ways in which an empire is held together, but also through the language of artistic expression. And you found this very unified artistic style that spread across the Mediterranean that is distinctively and uniquely Ottoman.
Royal workshops produced luxury items for the court, while commercial factories in provincial centers turned out products for patrons of all types. The city of Uşak was, and still is, known for the production of carpets.
Uşak carpets are particularly famous for this great medallion style that you see. If you see that the central medallion is complete, but on the edges, each of the medallions has actually been cut off in half. And there's a reason for that. You create the illusion of infinite repetition. And the idea of infinity really alludes to the divine. And so there's a very high ideal woven into the fabric, in one sense, of these carpets.
The factories in Iznik produced refined ceramics with splendid designs, like this plate with a peacock surrounded by feather-like saz leaves.
Et Saz en turc est un mot qui a une signification assez proche de forêt enchantée, justement. On est vraiment...
Saz is a Turkish word that has a meaning close to enchanted forest. So we're really in the world of magic, of the imagination, with a peacock who is flying and walking in a forest of large serrated leaves, slightly elongated, a little swirling, which gives a swirling pattern to the entire surface of the plate.
À l'ensemble de la surface de la coupe.
Saz leaves surround a dragon in this dynamic drawing by the celebrated artist Shaki.
Now, he was obviously trained in the art of calligraphy, because if you look at the way the line goes on the back of the dragon, it's thick and thin, it moves like a calligraphic pen. But the dragon has real life, he has great teeth, he has great vigor in the way he moves, and all around him are these delightful leaves.
Saz leaves are found on colorful Iznik tiles like these, which still today enliven the walls of mosques and palaces throughout Istanbul. Iznik potters also catered to the pilgrimage trade, creating souvenir tiles of holy sites for travelers to set into their walls back home. This tile shows the Kaaba that holds the black stone in the holy city of Mecca. A similar tile shows the holy city of Medina, not a required stop for pilgrims, but a part of the Muslim way of life.
One way for people to understand how people lived is to actually look at a room where they did live.
This is an actual room from an 18th century nobleman's home in Damascus, Syria, a prosperous commercial center, and the main gathering place for the Hajj caravans to Mecca.
The Damascus room is one of the great beloved treasures of our collection. It took us almost 8 years to put this room together.
In those 8 years, the Metropolitan did extensive research and conservation on the smallest of details, with a massive ceiling installed 20 feet above.
The room has tulip designs, for example, that are very much from a period in Ottoman history when there was a great tulip rage going on. So you have these sort of delightful tulips all over. And then you also have a strong imprint of Mamluk design, where you have very powerful geometric forms and banding of a certain type and medallion-based decoration. And you see that in the ceiling, you see that in some of the wall panels as well.
There is Arabic poetry around the cornice, and the poetry praises the house, praises the owner of the house, and praises the Prophet Muhammad. In the meantime, some of the imagery on the panels on the walls is really borrowed from European sources.
The Damascus room reflects a cosmopolitan climate firmly rooted in tradition. The Ottomans were enduring, but not eternal. After World War I, their empire was divided up by the Allies. A new term emerged, the Middle East. Syria became a French mandate. In 1929, a team of French experts working with local artisans to restore the great mosque of Damascus made an important artistic discovery.
Parmi les trésors du département,
Among the treasures of the Department of Islamic Art at the Louvre is a set of 9 mosaic reproductions from the Great Mosque of Damascus.
The long-lost mosaics dated to the original construction of the mosque in the 8th century. For 1,000 years, the mosaics were celebrated throughout the known world until they were completely covered with plaster in Ottoman times. This not only hid them, but preserved their original colors. Photography in those days was black and white, so the team set out to make paper reproductions in color.
Et donc, vous avez ici une photographie montrant.
And here we have a photograph that shows the artists executing these reproductions on small pieces of paper that were then assembled together. And if we come closer, we can see that each tessera tile of this mosaic was made 1-to-1. So this is a beautiful reproduction.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nicole. Today, I'll show you making metal tape.
rediscovery and discovery of a shared cultural heritage inspire the scholars who research, conserve, and curate Islamic art, the Louvre, Metropolitan, and other great museums.
Je suis profondément convaincue que l'enrichissement individuel. I am deeply convinced that personal growth comes from understanding of others. We choose to gain that insight through art, because art is what brings us closer to the depths of a civilization's personality. D'une civilisation.
I really believe now that these galleries are the antidote to Islamophobia. And even people who are set against the ideas behind these things cannot avoid being taken in, pulled in by the beauty of the objects.
Art, whether it was made centuries ago or yesterday, can be a catalyst for cultural understanding.
Ah oui, c'est présent. So yes, this responsibility is enormous, but it is also a wonderful opportunity, almost like a utopia, to change the world. Museums can change the world.
I know that's asking for a lot, but in fact, I believe it's very simple, because you just have to take that first step on the path of something that's beautiful and positive, and you find yourself going in that direction without too much difficulty.
Learn more about great museums at greatmuseums.org.
Okay. Anybody got any thoughts about that?
I now have a understanding more, but it's very difficult when they were started to explain the stuff in the earlier sections. I couldn't understand it.
I'm sorry, Jean, can you say that?
I said, I wish I could understand what they were talking about when they were descriptive of the earlier section. It was very hard to follow what they were talking about for me. I can't discern the.
Okay, just, you know, and I don't know how much this will help, but they were basically giving a brief and a very brief history of about, you know, a 700-year-long period.
Yeah.
From the beginning of when Islam began and spread through the Arabian Peninsula into North Africa, and the various ruling families or different dynasties, up until the Ottomans, which was really the last great Islamic empire. Okay, did that?
What I was having a hard time to follow was their description of the art itself.
Uh-huh.
I got the part where it was calligraphy in the latter part, but the earlier part, I couldn't figure out their description of the art itself.
Okay. Do you have something specific?
No, but it's just a blurb.
Okay.
I mean,
well, I know it's a lot of information, very quickly.
It's awfully, yes.
It wasn't clear. I had a problem too, and it wasn't only you. I wasn't clear, but they didn't show the fabulous Persian rugs that they're known for.
But they did. There was a section in there where that's really all they talked about.
Oh, I must have been out of the room.
Yeah.
But what did they say about the Taj Mahal? I missed that.
Well, he was he was, by that time, the Islamic Empire had basically split up into three groups, right? There was the section that was in North Africa, really, all the northern half of Africa, the Middle East up until like Iraq and Iran, and all through like Central Europe. And they were all under, one group of rulers. And then you had the Safavids, which were in Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, you know, that whole central, you know, Eurasian area.
Did I miss Spain? Did I miss Spain? I didn't see much of the architect that they influenced southern Spain. They were there for 500 years.
Right. Yeah. And they did. They showed some examples of that. You know, actually that Moroccan room where they had the actual Moroccan family come who had been, you know, doing the different types of crafts and actually install that in the Louvre. You know, that was part of the architecture. And, you know, they talked about, what is it, Cordova, Spain? Which is,
yeah, I was in Spain and their architect. I like their architect the best and their rugs.
Yeah. But to answer your question about the Taj, that was a different set of rulers, you know, that kind of coexisted at the same time as the Safavids. And they sort of had their own thing going on in like India, parts of China, you know, all through like Indonesia, you know. I mean, it was pretty, you know, pretty expansive. And that was the Mughals in India and Pakistan and all that area. But it was one of the Mughals who built the Taj.
Okay, so it was a Muslim who was the architect for the Taj Mahal?
Well, it was a Mughal ruler who built the Taj.
And he was Muslim?
He was, yes. He was Islamic, yes.
Well, their architecture is fabulous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just fabulous.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to venture into this, you know, is because it covers a lot of history.
Yeah.
And if you don't get anything else out of a video like this and some of the subsequent videos that we'll be watching, it is that without the Islamic, you know, empire, and without their efforts to collect and to catalog and to keep not only their own inventions and medicine and things like that, but also from all of Europe, you know, all of antiquity, you know, the Greek, the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire was expansive. Remember, it stretched all the way into Great Britain and all the way, you know, up into even like, you know, Sweden and Norway, right? And all the way over into the Russias, you know. So, you know, they collected all that information and they wrote it down so that there was a historical account. And remember what happened in Europe, right? Right around about the 11th century, you know, well, it was what, the 7th century actually, you know, everything fell apart. And we went into what we were calling the Dark Ages. And, you know, we lost, you know, the Europeans lost all mathematics, medicine, astronomy, all of those, you know, all of that knowledge literally died and went away. And there was none of that. And if it was not for Islam, none of that would have ever been recovered.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about them was that they didn't care where the knowledge came from. They collected it. It was valuable to them, you know, and they held on to it in their libraries and things like that. Luckily, you know, as history would have it, you know, you had a rise of the Renaissance and European culture again, and they basically got a lot of that back, you know, and they got it back just in time, because it wasn't very long after that that you had Genghis Khan come in and totally destroy those libraries and things, you know, all through like, Eurasia and the Middle East. And, if it had not been for them preserving it in the first place, it would have all been lost, forever. I mean, and a lot of it really was. So, I mean, we take it for granted, but, simple things like, architecture, how to work with stone, how to work with ceramics, how to work with paint, how to make paper, things like that. All of that knowledge, at one point in time, it was totally gone in Europe. Nobody knew how to do any of that. And it was really through Islam that information filtered back in again. So, it's good to know a little bit about history and about why this story, about how Islam sort of spread and collected, various aspects of culture, not only from Europe, but also from China, and all throughout East Asia. And they acted as a conduit, to pass information back and forth, from China to Europe, and it's a pretty big story, and we could go a lot more in depth into it, and we will look at certain aspects of it, but just keep in mind the historical context for it. Anybody got any?
I have a much greater appreciation for Islamic art. And I noticed that the trade routes that they traced on those maps that they showed us are the same that they are talking about today, especially how China has tried to come in and reestablish those routes with the different countries that touch it, all the way from China through to Europe.
Yeah. They're, China has got a very old culture. They go back, really about 6,000 to 8,000 years, and after really about 8,000 years, they begin to really form really a pretty cohesive identity, as China and a culture. And one of the things with China is they've always been very open to trade, and passing things back and forth, which somehow, even, we're talking back around 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, they've now found archaeological evidence where some of the materials, from China have found their way into Europe. And, you're talking, very early European settlements, with some of these objects, that came from China and vice versa. So there was a lot of trading going on really for a very long time that we don't have a cohesive history of. But that's been going on for a very, very long time. So
I also thought that they ended on a very positive note in that the galleries are the antidote to Islamophobia. Art is a catalyst for cultural understanding, and museums can change the world. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's from their own standpoint, but yeah, understanding art and understanding culture and how they connect gives you a better appreciation and really kind of helps you understand, why you see the world the way you do right now. Because it's had a very long influence, and we're talking literally thousands of years now. So,
I think that the video, while long, was very short in the sense that the things that it was trying to explain and share with us, I think that would do all of us well, perhaps, to revisit that video and look at it again, or one similar to that. So, because it kind of like forms the basis of our understanding of how art is appropriated in various ways. I mean, sometimes it's exchanged, sometimes it comes out as a result of war, where where the dominant person, whoever takes all the art and uses it to better themselves, or it can be where you're sharing back and forth. But it's very clear that it has been going on since the beginning of man. And sometimes it's a good thing when it's exchanged, and other times not so good when the dominant one takes it and steal it and make it their own. But I think that the video did a fairly good job of trying to bring some of this clear, because you can see that before the modern day, many things have been changing for the good. Well, there's good and there's bad or evil, you might want to say, but it happened. And we're fortunate now to see and enjoy the things that people have before us. We're not the only smart people. People before us were extremely smart and brilliant and used the tools that they had at that time to express themselves and express how humans live and play.
Well, you know, I don't know how all of you guys, how excited you're going to be about this, but you know, we're going to kind of do a dive into like the Safavids and the Mughals and the Ottomans, and you know, look at architecture, look at some of the art, and the different things that they've each, you know, contributed. You know, we spent a little bit of time on Africa. Now we're going to spend a little time in the Middle East and into China and even Japan, and you know, take a look at what those cultures basically contributed, you know, to European culture as well. So you know, I think the broader understanding you get of what these cultures were all about, and you know, the things that they contributed, you know, the better you'll appreciate, you know, some of the art that we're actually making today, and how it's made, how it's made. So anyway, that's the plan. Okay. So you guys are going to be a lot more knowledgeable about stuff that you never knew about, we hope. So anyway, on that happy note, okay, how many of you, quite a few of you were here on Friday for the drawing session, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not yet. Yeah.
And you know, the question came up, not Friday, but a couple of weeks ago. I had mentioned Silver Point, and you know, a lot of you didn't have any clue as to what Silver Point really was or what it's all about. And so, yeah, so I found this video, and you know, it's from that Russian academy, but this guy, Vladimir London, he's going to basically explain, you know, how to do a Silver Point drawing. And it's an interesting process. You know, you should watch this. And then after you see this, I want you to reflect, you know, on the fact that a lot of the drawings that we now have from people like Leonardo da Vinci and Giotto, and, you know, all of those early Renaissance artists, the vast majority of them were done in this process, because graphite didn't, well, it existed, but nobody had figured out how to stick in a pencil yet to make a mark on a piece of that. That wouldn't happen for about another 200, almost 300 years, okay? And so all these drawings are either done in what we call gall ink and or silver point. And in fact, a large collection of Da Vinci's drawings are in silver point. So I want you to watch this and get a sense of, you know, how it's actually done, okay? Any questions before we dive into that?
So silver point is just silver ink painting?
No, but it will explain, okay?
Excuse me?
It will explain what silver point is.
Okay, thank you.
That's why we're doing the video. So you get a good idea as to what it is. All right, so can you guys see the drawing in silver point?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure before we jump in.
Table of contents. 1. Introduction. History of silver point. 3. Metal point drawing tools. 4. Silver point supports. 5. Preparing silver point drawings. 6. Silver point drawing techniques. 7. Silver point tarnishing. 8. Storing silver point artworks. 9. Conclusion. Part 1. Introduction. Metal point is an almost forgotten media. Today, the mainstream art education does not include metal point drawing technique into the drawing curriculum, and as a result, only few.
You make it louder?
Yes, you make it louder.
The use of this fascinating technique has declined since the time of the old masters, when metal point was arguably at its best. The allure of the old masters drawing in metal point attracts visitors to museums still to these days. The real purpose of my story is to bring attention to this drawing technique and reveal some of its secrets. One of the most used metals for metal point drawings was silver. That is why the word silver point became the name of choice for this technique. Many drawings in metal point are called silver point even though the actual metal might not be silver. In this presentation, I will use terms metal point and silver point interchangeably. The silver point drawing method is very old and precedes drawing in graphite. Comparing to other drawing media, metal point drawings have a unique appearance of a unified surface that makes them so attractive. Such subtle rendering effects can be done only in metal point. Every line in silver point is thin but clearly visible. That makes the media well suited for creating detailed, small to medium scale drawings. The metal point technique has some drawbacks. It is an unforgiving media because silver point lines are very difficult to erase, so fixing mistakes is not an easy task. This drawing method demands a great deal of discipline and craftsmanship. Rendering in silver point takes time, and it can only be used on special grounds. This partly explains why only a few living artists attempt to master this captivating drawing method. Nevertheless, despite all the challenges silver point presents, I strongly recommend this media for any beginner and advanced art student to practice their drawing skills. It is a great media for perfecting fine art skills. It trains the eye and hand as well as provides drawing discipline. At the time of the old masters, silver point was one of the must-practice subjects for young apprentices to develop their drawing skills before they continued on to painting in oil. Unfortunately, drawing in silver point has been neglected as a learning exercise in almost all contemporary fine art educational institutions. Hardly any present-day fine art academy or art college offers their students tutorials on silver point. With pleasure, I will present the almost lost secrets of silver point. This presentation is illustrated with real-life examples of making silver point drawings. Those drawings are part of the Drawing Academy video lessons. If you want to know more about silver point drawing techniques and see how those drawings were made step by step, please visit drawingacademy.com. History of silver point. The history of silver point goes back many centuries. First, it was used as writing and marking tools. Many medieval parchment manuscripts have writing lines and margins marked in metal point. Fine artists used silver point as a drawing media. There are many breathtaking drawings in silver point done by the old masters. Many great artists from the past left their creative heritage in this media. Leonardo da Vinci, Filippino Lippi, Albrecht Dürer, Raphael, Sandro Botticelli, Rogier van der Weyden, Van Eyck, Hans Holbein, and many others. In his book, Il Libro dell'Arte, Cennini, fine artist and art historian of the Renaissance time, gives instructions to fine artists that the silver point technique should be mastered first by the apprentice before advancing to the medium of painting. This advice corresponds well with the drawing in silver point by Raphael, who beautifully drew a portrait of a boy, which is assumed to be his self-portrait before the age of 17. Young Albrecht Dürer does another well-known silver point self-portrait at the age of 13, when he was an assistant in his father's goldsmith workshop. The reason why Cennini was insisting on art apprentices mastering silver point first is because this technique requires much greater control and precision than any other drawing media. The discipline of metal point helps to develop a skill of drawing that is essential for any draftsman who wants to improve their fine art skills. By the 16th century, use of metal point as a drawing media had declined because new drawing materials like graphite became available. Before that, fine artists used such drawing media like charcoal, with chalks, and metal. In the 17th century, some fine artists continued using silver point on rare occasions. For example, Rembrandt made the portrait of his wife, Saskia, in 1633, using the metal point technique. In the 19th century, metal point media had once again gained the attention of fine artists. The demand for metal point materials was big enough for Windsor and kits. There are many artists who work today in this technique. However, it is by no means a mainstream media. Here are some examples of contemporary artworks in silver point. Dennis J. Martin, Richard A. Kirk, David Ladmore, Tom Mazzullo, Douglas S. Gillette, Curtis Bartone, and one of my favorite silver point artists, Victor Coolback.
Oh.
The silver point drawing method has changed very little since the time of the old masters. The same principles are in place. An artist uses a soft metal stylus, which leaves small deposits on a surface coated with special grounds. These days, more modern metal point materials are available for fine artists. For example, I have done many drawings in a nickel-silver alloy on grounds containing titanium white. Such alloys and pigments were not invented yet at the time of the old masters. In the next review, I will go into more detail about materials that can be used for silver point artworks. Metal point drawing tools. Because the silver point technique is not widely used today, you may find that your local art supply store might not stock metal point drawing materials. Nevertheless, you can go around and fill your drawing toolbox with necessary materials when you know what to look for. All materials for silver point drawing can be divided into drawing tools, grounds, and supports. Let's start with drawing tools. A metal point stylus is made of soft metal that leaves small particles on specially prepared grounds. Many soft metals and metal alloys are suitable for the metal point technique. Each metal has its own unique characteristics and reacts in a different way to the ground and environment. Here's the list of most used metals for drawing. 1. Silver. Silver is one of the most used metal points. Many old masters favor this metal for its noble origins, purity of lines, permanence, and affordability. Silver point was so commonly used that the metal point technique is often interchangeably called silver point. Silver point gives gray tint lines that with time tarnish into a brown color. A silver point stylus can be made from silver wire, available in the jewelry making industry. Here is a 0.9mm dead soft pure 999 silver. The stylus is thin silver wire, held in a mechanical pencil. There are other thicker wires available, like this 2mm dead soft silver stylus. It has two workable ends which are shaped differently. One has a pointy tip, the other end is cut under a 45-degree angle. A 45-degree angle tip can produce even wider lines. This working end can actually give two types of lines, thin and wide. If this end is placed on the support on its flat polished surface, a wider line can be drawn. On the other hand, turning the stylus so it touches the paper with a sharp edge gives slimmer lines. In this way, tips on either end of the stylus can be used to make a variety of lines with different thicknesses. Any other pieces of silver metal can be shaped and used for drawing. Just to illustrate how pure silver works, I will use a 999 silver bullion coin. It is a 1 troy ounce Austrian Philharmonic coin. The coin marks grounded surfaces very well. The dead soft silver stylus is made of the same pure silver as the bullion coin. 2. Gold. The most noble of all metal points is gold. This precious metal gives a great deal of satisfaction both during the drawing process and as a finished artwork. Here is a pure 999 gold stylus. Needless to say, it comes with a hefty price tag. A pure gold point gives a lighter, warm gray mark. Gold is one of the metals that will not tarnish with time. Its warm gray marks will keep high permanency of the color. Gold point gives delicate lines and is very pleasant to draw with. However, due to the high price, a gold point technique is less popular than silver point. I have to say, though, that one small piece of 0.9 millimeter golden wire will last for years and can be used for hundreds of metal point drawings. In the long run, it will justify its price. 3. Copper. Copper is another metal that can be used for metal point drawings. Pure copper has a reddish-orange color. Man has used this metal for thousands of years. For metal point drawings, copper often was used as an alloy ingredient. It can be melted with silver with proportions up to 20% of copper or gold, thus reducing the price of these expensive metals. Copper leaves gray marks on the ground. With time, it will tarnish to a yellowish-greenish tint. 4. Brass. Brass is another alloy of copper with zinc. It is cheap, so you don't have to invest in expensive metal point materials. Here's a bronze screw with a sandpapered end. I think you have an idea by now that any soft metal which leaves marks on a specially prepared ground can be used for drawing purposes. The brass stylus that's made from a screw gives very noticeable marks as well. Brass marks are slightly lighter and have a gray color with a slightly yellowing tint. Five. Nickel silver. Another metal point is the nickel silver. Here's the 0.9 millimeter nickel silver stylus. It is a good and affordable metal point tool. Despite its name, this metal alloy contains no chemical silver. This stylus is made of alloy copper, nickel, and zinc. The name nickel silver derives from its white silvery appearance. It is also called German silver, as this metal was reinvented in Germany in the 18th century. Early on, it was produced in China. However, it is the old masters had the benefit of using it, because the export of this strategic metal was banned in ancient China. Nickel silver stylus leaves well-pronounced gray marks that are even darker than those left by pure silver or gold. 6. Lead. Lead is one of the ancient metals used for writing and drawing. Pure lead is very soft and does not require a specially prepared ground. It will mark plain uncoated paper. This is the only erasable metal point. Due to its softness, lead stylus will become a blunt quite quickly. It requires resharpening more often than other metal point tools. During the Old Master's time, lead was also alloyed with tin and other metals to produce drawing styluses. However, lead is toxic and therefore not advisable for use. Seven. Pewter. A good alternative to lead is pewter. This alloy is made of tin and copper, and therefore is not toxic. It is reasonably soft, which gives both advantage and disadvantage in metal point drawing. Being soft allows the use of this metal alloy on most grounds for silver point. At the same time, the stylus tip might become blunt quicker than other metal points. There are other metals and alloys that can be used for metal point drawing. You can test various items like coins, keys, badges, etc. made of metal to see how they mark opponent's supports. You might find some unassuming items that can become your drawing tools. Originally, a metal stylus was held in a wooden handle. Alternatively, a mechanical pencil can be used as a stylus holder. I'm using two sizes, 0.9 and 2 millimeter pencils, which hold metal wire very well. The mechanical pencil is a very convenient tool and a big improvement since the Old Master's time. Apart from toxic lead, which can be used on plain paper, all other metal points require specially prepared supports. Today, Metal point is seldom used because there are so many materials available which do not require support coating. However, even among contemporary drawing materials, there is no alternative to metal point when it comes to capturing the smallest details. A thin silver point stylus produces permanent, non-fading, and non-erasable lines that will withstand the test of time. Some of the old masters' drawings are more than 700 years old. Such permanence is explained by the inertness of the metals used. For example, gold point will remain stable without oxidation for as long as the support lasts. So here we are today, with the silver point support and ground dictating how permanent metal point artwork will be. Silver point supports. Metal point styluses would only leave marks on specially grounded supports. Some suppliers provide prefabricated mixes for support grounds, as well as ready-coated papers. Although main art supply stores do not stock metal point drawing tools, you may find various supports suitable for silver point. Such supports included wooden panels, ceramic tiles, gesso panels, paper boards, paper, vellum or parchment, which is often made from calfskin, and other natural and synthetic materials. Each of the supports has its advantages and disadvantages. While wooden panels are strong and rigid, they can be quite bulky. Imagine a collection of 100 separate drawings on wooden panels. Ceramic tiles have the strongest and toughest surface, but they are very heavy, limited in size, and therefore impractical. Some art supply stores sell specially prepared gesso panels. Such panels offer great support and come with ready-to-draw surface. However, a fine artist might consider the price they come at. Vellum or parchment is great and authentic support. The La Bella Principessa drawing, possibly done by Leonardo da Vinci, is toned silver point drawing on vellum. Needless to say that such support has never been cheap. On another hand, properly stored parchment will outlive paper for many centuries. The most affordable, light, versatile, easy to use and store support is heavy-duty paper. In fact, many of medieval and Renaissance silver point drawings are done on paper. Each support must be covered with a special ground that will take metal point marks. Flexibility of a support dictates how many layers of ground can be applied on a surface. For paper support, 2 coats of ground are sufficient enough to take the silver point marks while keeping paper flexible. Parchment can be coated in the same manner as paper. Rigid wooden and gesso panels can hold more ground layers. Each additional coat needs to be applied after the previous one is completed. The smooth surface of the board can be achieved by sandpapering every coat before applying the next layer. In the next chapter, you will discover how to prepare a silver point ground and what materials can be used for that purpose. Preparing silver point grounds. Plain supports must be coated with specially prepared metal point grounds. Such grounds have to be a little bit abrasive, so a silver point stylus can deposit microscopic particles of metal on the surface. At the time of the old masters, traditional metal point ground recipes were using such materials like bone dust, eggshell powder, seashell powder, and the lead white pigment. Today, more convenient materials become available for fine artists. A silver point ground can be purchased in ready-made powder. Some online shops offer such pre-mixed grounds. It is quite easy to prepare a metal point ground yourself. Some materials for that purpose include a white chalk powder as filler for a metal point ground. Marble dust is another alternative to the ground. It has an appropriate abrasive nature and works well for rigid supports. The titanium white pigment can be added to the mix. It is very opaque and has a brilliant white color. Gum arabic can be used as a binding material for the ground. This is the same binder that comes in watercolor and gouache paints. Some recipes for metal point grounds have other binding mediums like shellac, animal or plant glues, and casein. Ready-made gouache is a great ground for metal point drawings. White gouache can be mixed with any other gouache or watercolor color to achieve the desired tint and tone. For example, gold ochre. Sepia or Van Dyke brown can be added into a white gouache to get brown tint. A palette knife is a useful tool to work with grounds. A flat synthetic brush is good for applying the ground on the drawing support. White pigments and powders can give a clean, fresh look to the support. However, many artists use off-white or toned backgrounds for metal point drawings. Toning the ground comes from the time of the old masters, when artists were creating light and shade chiaroscuro effects. The tint of a ground was used as a middle tone, while shadows were rendered in metal point and lights highlighted in white paint, usually white lead. Tinted backgrounds made the drawing process more economical. Using the tone of the ground as a mid-tone saves time, as an artist only needs to render dark shades in silver point while leaving middle tones untouched. The highlights then can be washed in white, water-based paint, like watercolor or gouache. Various paints can be used for toned backgrounds. In the past, dry pigments for oil or tempera paints were the obvious choice for that purpose. Today, the variety of traditional natural pigments or new synthetic colors can be added to the ground mix. Colored gouache or watercolor paints are well suited for that task. Tinted backgrounds can have any color an artist chooses. The common choices for the background tint were affordable and widely available pigments of green, brown, gray, and other colors. To tint a background, dry color pigment can be added into the ground mix. Pigments like terra verte, indigo, hematite, vermilion, ochre, and others were often used. The use of expensive pigments like blue lapis lazurite was limited to illustrations in medieval scripts. Now I will illustrate the process of preparing silver point ground and coating a support with it. There are many recipes of making a ground for silver point drawings. In this case, I am using one that has simple ingredients and is fast to make. This ground has white designer's gouache as the main component. It also contains sepia and titanium white pigments. Modern materials made silver point less harmful to the artist's health. One of the original recipes for the metal point ground included toxic white lead, which these days can be replaced with zinc oxide or titanium white pigments. Titanium white pigment is optional. It serves the purpose of abrasive dust. It can be replaced with white chalk or marble dust, for example. Components of the ground give necessary abrasive qualities to the coated support surface. It is similar to drawing on very fine sandpaper. Soft metal styluses will leave marks on such smooth yet abrasive coat. Gouache has gum arabic as a binding medium. Mixing mediums such as glue, water, gum arabic, or other animal or plant glue can bound with ground pigments and dust. Sometimes linseed oil can be used as well. The flat synthetic brush is used for support coating. This brush is quite soft and leaves no visible brush marks, which is important for the metal point artwork appearance. Usually 2 to 3 coats of ground are sufficient for drawing support. However, some artists were applying up to 9 coats with intermediate sandpapering of dry ground layers to achieve a smooth surface. To learn more on the silver point grounds by watching video lessons specifically dedicated to this topic, you can sign up for the Drawing Academy course at www.drawingacademy.com. The Drawing Art Academy is the online course that teaches solid skills of classical drawing. The Academy founders, Vladimir London and Natalie Ritchie, created a series of video lessons which reveal secrets of traditional drawing techniques. Academy tutors will show you, by their own example, how to draw as they create artworks right in front of your eyes from beginning to end, all while explaining step by step everything you need to know about drawing. This course delivers no-nonsense information.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead.
1. Drawing materials and equipment. 2. How to use pencils and hatching techniques. 3. Light in perspective.
All right. Anybody got any thoughts about that?
So you're making a surface that the metal stylus has to like scratch on. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
I got it. Thank you.
Would pastel, some of the more rough pastel papers work for that or not?
My guess is that they're probably too rough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that they would wear your metal point down very quickly.
Ah, okay.
Got to get the right tooth. And it's, you know, if you rub your finger over those surfaces, they feel pretty smooth.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're really not that abrasive. It's really a very, very mild abrasive. And it also depends on the metal that you choose to use. You know, some of those are softer, some of those are harder. You know, if you get, like, for example, the copper, and you're using copper wire tends to be one of the harder metals. And so it can take a little more of an abrasive surface, and it doesn't wear down real fast. If you're using actual, almost pure silver or pure gold, the gold will last a while, but on a really rough surface, it would wear down much quicker. And so, so you'd have to, price your drawings accordingly.
Charles?
Yes.
I have here a letter opener, and the handle is sterling silver. And I'm trying a piece of paper. Yeah, you can write and draw with a piece of silver. The only it's not too dark like when you do it with a regular pencil.
Right, but here's the thing. Okay. Yes, you can make a mark with, if it's sterling or a really high grade silver, or even a really high grade silver coin, you can make a mark on just regular paper. Now, take that piece of paper, take it out of your book and set it aside, pin it on the wall or something like that, and watch it over like the next 3 weeks. Okay. What's going to happen is the marks that you just made today will, because they're exposed to air, they'll get darker.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Because that's, and they kind of covered that a little bit, or, said they were going to cover the tarnishing process. What happens over time with any kind of metal point is as it's exposed to air, the metal will react with the surface and oxidize. And as it oxidizes, it's going to change color, but it's also going to get dark. Okay. And that's the whole thing, with metal point. When you do those drawings and they're new, right, they look pretty soft. It's hard to get like a really dark area, with that silver point technique. But, wait a couple of months. It's going to get a lot darker. Pardon?
No, I just said they were speaking of the different type of support that you would have. You could use wooden panels, or you could use ceramic tile or parchment. Right. What would you say for beginning people would be the best type of support to use?
I would just use like a good archival, fairly heavyweight paper.
Archival. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you want to play with this and try it, rather than investing in the materials to create your own grounds and stuff like that, I would just go online and I would order, a support, paper support, for silver point, and the tips. And, they had one that they called a silver nickel alloy, right? Which had no silver in it. It was actually just copper and tin, which is the cheapest, least expensive to buy. But the fact is, you don't really have to buy any, really much of anything. if you have a mechanical pencil around and you have any kind of wire for jewelry or anything like that, if any of you ladies taken jewelry classes before, you can just take and you cut a short section of that, put it in that, holder, and you don't really even have to have the holder. You can do it with your hand as well. And, start drawing, with that piece of silver or whatever kind of wire you have. Really, almost any kind of metal will make a mark. Okay.
I think I have some old silver solder with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Solder would work. Solder is not a very fine wire, and will probably, if you could take it and sand it down so that it's got like a 45-degree angle on it, then it might be a more useful tool for you. But
this is pretty fine wire. This was designed to solder electrical components on board, so it's pretty tiny.
Oh, yeah. If it's real fine, then just cut a small section of it. Like I said, put it in a mechanical pencil or something like that, and try it. See how it works. What do you got to lose, right? And
that's right. Just a little time.
And you can do it. Any of you, you can do this on just a regular piece of paper. You don't have to have the ground. You can make marks, with some kind of metal, on like a regular piece of bond paper or something like that. The thing is that it's going to come out very light at first, and you'll have to wait, for it to tarnish, to get darker. It will show up if you have a ground surface. You'll leave a little more material behind at first, so you can see what you're doing a little bit better. But it's an interesting process. And you can create some pretty amazing drawings, with this material. And the nice thing is, it's pretty permanent. It will easily last as long as the support does. So if you guys,
I wanted to comment that I'm amazed that all of these toxic materials that the artists used didn't cause them to pass away earlier, because they probably didn't know how toxic it was.
Yeah. Well, the fact is that a lot of them did die. Yeah. But that's why, a lot of artists didn't use lead. That was used very early on because it was pretty easy to get and common. But later on, pure silver, copper, and gold were kind of the standards for most people to draw with. Because none of those are actually toxic. You can handle them, and you won't kill yourself, or hurt your, damage your health. So, anybody else?
Nope.
No.
Lunch time.
It is. Armando's bell went off right on time at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
All right. Before everybody goes away, okay, I want to mention this is the week that you're supposed to be turning in your project.
I'm not even halfway. No.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So you got a couple of days till Thursday to finish it. Okay.
Which project are we speaking of?
I gave you guys a long-term project.
Which was? I must have missed it.
You were supposed to have created a piece of art, right? And it could be on anything, any subject, could be in any medium, okay?
Right.
But, I wanted to see how you developed the creative process behind it.
Okay. Because, I just got through with the Piedmont Park piece, but I did not take pictures as it developed.
Okay, but my thing is, kind of the thinking behind it. It's like, the thumbnail sketches, any kind of written down, oh, this is what I want to do, this is my goal, right? And then the final piece.
Well,
All right.
I threw away whatever I had as a small piece, and no, I cannot deliver that.
Oh, okay. Well,
So, Charles, mine is very long, so can I just take a portion of that?
what do you mean it's long? You mean it's large in size?
It's 60 pages.
Oh, okay.
Not for me.
And is it something that is handwritten, or is it something that is digital?
Oh, no, I haven't digitized it yet. It's the book that I'm working on.
You mean the alphabet animal book?
Yes.
Well, you could show, a couple of pages here.
Okay, that's what I plan to do then. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to have the whole thing. As long as we know, okay, it's basically an alphabet book, A to Z. It's animals. It's for kids, and this is a sample of a couple of pages.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Page 2 of page 60.
Yeah, and maybe page 35 or something like that, or 30.
I'll give a sample throughout the book.
Well, yeah, whatever you want to do, it's fine, But we've got the idea. It's a book. It's going to be up to 60 pages, and yeah, this is what it's going to look like. Okay. Anybody else, like Veronica, or Naomi, or John?
Well, I'm working on my beach scene, so that's what you'll see.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I already showed the one of the boy with his head down. As I told you, and I said that was going to be my project of series of 3, and I only have the one done.
Okay. Did you do any thumbnail sketches of the other 2?
It does I got some photographs and I did some little thumbnail of the idea, but I just have the one completed.
Yeah. Well, the actual how you arrived at doing what you're doing, to me, is more important than the final work.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
I can show some reference pictures that I had, and I don't have the thumbnails, things like that, but the reference pictures and the thought process.
Yeah, but I mean, how long does it take to do a thumbnail? It's like 10 minutes, and work out a couple of compositions and like, okay, yeah, this is kind of where I'm going with it. This is one piece of 3. And they're all about this subject and yada, 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 right? And that, that shows people where you're headed with it. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that hard, really.
No, it's not.
I have something from years ago. When I was painting and I took photos as I was going along.
Look, you had almost 2 months on this now.
I can't hear you.
You've had almost 2 months on this now. Okay.
Well, I must have missed the class that you mentioned it. So, and I hear you.
I mean,
I hear you.
I
hear you, Charles. When I asked you have 3 days, Claudia.
You did not remind us every week.
I have mentioned it several times during the last 2 months. Yes. Look, folks, this is not a big heavy lift. I mean, yeah. I mean, yes, to get something finished done, yes, it requires time. But again, I'm trying to emphasize to all of you, one thing that will make your life easier and end up giving you a better result in the end is spend a little bit of time thinking and working through issues before you jump in, you know, to slapping paint or drawing or, you know, whatever. You know, figure it out first, right? Because, you know, that process of, you know, how you come up with an idea and kind of your vision for where you want to be, you know, the more you can nail that down in the beginning, the closer you'll get to it in the end. You know, will it look exactly the way you see it in your head when you thought of it? Probably not. It's going to change. We know that. But, you know, but having that intention and starting off in a direction is important. Okay. So anyway, that's due on Thursday. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. So Armando, you better be sweet talking those ladies and get one of them on your couch here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the clock is ticking, my friend. Okay?
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions or anything about?
Well, everybody, see y'all tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Richard has a question, but he has to speak.
Oh, Richard, yeah?
He has his, he's muted.
Yes, you are. Richard, you're muted. Unmute yourself. See if I can do it for you.
He's doing it. Oh, he's trying to do it now.
There we are. All right, Richard, talk to us.
Just in the temperature of the kiln, what kind of fuel they use, and how do they do it?
What about temperature and yada yada?
Well, on the ceramic thing, it has to be heated up to a very high temperature.
Yeah, it does.
So what do you have it out you?
How hot you have, it depends on the clay, but usually for like a low fire, it's around about 1400 degrees.
What kind of fuel would you use?
Well, we use an electric kiln. What are you doing?
On the desert out there in the Arab countries.
What?
What kind of fuel would you use to heat that thing?
Well, in the olden days, they would use wood.
In the desert, you ain't got much wood.
Right. It would take a lot of wood to heat a kiln to about 1400 degrees and keep it there for several hours. Yeah. But, you know, if you've got something to fire, Richard, you know, you could always bring it to the Benson Center and I'll fire it for you.
Thank you. That's enough. Time to eat.
Okay. Just make sure that it's, you know, let me know what kind of clay it is and what it has to be fired at, because that's the important part. Not all clays are fired at the same temperature. Okay? Yeah, some higher, some lower. If you get some of the lower fire clays and you put them at a high temperature, they turn to liquid in the kiln and it makes a real mess. I don't really want to do that. Okay. But if you want to, you can always use some of the clay at Benson too. You can always come by and I'll give you some clay to work with.
I was concerned what the Arabs did to make those beautiful portions.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah,
Charles.
and things like that. Okay.
Yeah. Charles, I think you remember when the young man made the artist made the sunflower seeds, and he used that big kiln that he made out in China. So they probably did that in the desert also, made big kilns, big ovens and stuff to do ceramic tile.
Yeah. Well, what they used to do is, you know, in different towns and villages that were known for ceramics, and this is actually started in Africa. They would take mud brick and they would make almost like a big oven that you would, you know, feed wood underneath, and they would, you know, burn a load of wood, then they'd put more wood in and burn more until they heated the brick up to a temperature, and then they would put the pottery in it, you know, and close it up and keep temperature and the fire going, you know, to keep the temperature up on it. Sometimes, depending on the clay, it would have to be done for days, which means that somebody had to stay up all night and keep feeding that fire. So that was that.
And then in between, you can use it as a pizza oven.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can make pizza out of it.
Right.
Yeah. But, you know, the good news is, you know, we have an electric kiln, you know, at Benson, and, you know, I can turn it on and I don't have to stay there all night. You know, it'll run, it'll shut itself off when it hits the right temperature, and, you know, it works pretty well so far. So, all righty. Anybody else?
Are there two kills? Is there another one over at the neighborhood section?
Yes.
I thought, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now the kilns are different though. Okay. The one at the neighborhood is the one that I actually like better because it's a manual kiln, and it, you know, it's basically got a cone that you place, you know, in the shutoff mechanism, and when the cone slumps, it releases it. And, you know, I'm old school. I like that better.
Wow.
You know, Helen, for whatever reason, talked the powers that be into buying a automated computerized electric kiln, which I hate, by the way, because, you know, you're relying on the computer, and as long as the computer works right, you're fine. But, you know, they get glitches every once in a while. And see an old manual kiln, you don't ever have to worry about that. You know what temperature it fired at by putting the right cone in there and just letting it melt and releasing it. But, you know, like all things in life, things change and you just adapt to them. And, you know, but right now that kiln's working just fine. I've used it for the last couple of weeks and seems to be doing the job. So, c'est la vie, right?
Okay. Bye, Charles.
All right. You guys have a good lunch, and we'll see you tomorrow at around about 2 o'clock. Okay? Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.